The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Here we go. We're up and running on a monstrous, and I mean absolutely monstrous show on tap today, as yesterday was the first Thursday without football. Depending on when you're tuning in, this will be the last Friday without football because the Vols hit the practice field and will visit with the media on Tuesday. We'll be there and have coverage of that for you with the one, the only Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. Coming up on the program today, of course, we will have This Day in Tennessee Sports History. We'll have the Tennessee Stat of the Day. Tennessee's most unique position group headed into fall camp. I should say intriguing position group. My bad. Lincoln Riley talks non-conference games, what that means for Tennessee. I think the days of having the Miamis and the Notre Dames are pretty much done. The Neyland Entertainment District, we've been so busy we haven't had a chance to get to that. Do you like it? Do you think it's a little much? Your thoughts. And then Mack Brown talks age. Can coaches be too old? I've got some strong feelings on that. And then Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning are going at it, apparently. Also, recruiting news as Tennessee's offensive tackle prospect David Sanders has decided to take a couple of visits, and the Vols are in on one of the top quarterback prospects in the 2026 class. So, like Caleb has great comments, Tennessee recruits great quarterbacks. How are you, Caleb?
I am good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. Let's go ahead and get rolling now. It is time for today's tough question, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks with an X, worktrucksllc.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
By the way, everybody asking about how you hurt your hand a little bit. And they're asking on the message board. It's just a carpal tunnel syndrome. He'll be okay. He wasn't in a fight or anything. Besides that, if Caleb was in a fight, he'd have a couple of black eyes and a bloody nose, and his fist would be fine.
Yeah, guys, I can't fight for anything. I'm not a fighter.
I was just joking. I was joking
at all.
You were supposed to say, man, I got this. I could absolutely handle any sort of fight.
My dog now, he's not aggressive, but he can fight with other dogs. Okay. My dog took on a pit bull one time. I'm just saying.
I don't even like seeing anything like that because I've seen a dog kill another dog when I was a kid, and it was very traumatizing. Yes. So I don't like seeing dog fights. They bother me more than most people. That's why I was so anti Mike Vick at the time. And why, frankly, I'll never quite forgive him for that. But that's fine. You can. We forgive everybody.
To do what Michael Vick did, you have to be a sociopath to even like be a fan of like what Michael Vick was doing. They were like, read the stories of what they were doing.
Yeah.
There's no way you're not a sociopath.
It's a different level. Tennessee's most intriguing position group heading into fall camp, which will begin on Wednesday, is what?
Now this is interesting. I have an intriguing take because everybody's going to say the secondary because they want to see the new units. And I get it. Secondary is intriguing. Everybody talks about offensive line, receivers, and quarterback. Everybody's most excited about. But I'm interested in their tight end rotation, Dave. I'm interested in who emerges for Tennessee at tight end because I think they want Ethan Davis to emerge as a superstar at the position. And we don't know for sure if he will yet. So I'm leaning Ethan Davis, and because of that, the tight end position.
Okay, so I'm going to go quarterback. I'm picking my 4. I'm not going to give you an other option because I think these are the most intriguing, and I don't think it's close. I'm going to go tight end, which you said, which I hadn't thought of until you threw that in there, but it's a very good one. By the way, I saw the Alabama transfer. Can you help me with his name? I saw him recently. Good size. I think
that Holden stays. My mind's
Kitzelman.
Miles Kitzelman.
Miles Kitzelman. Yes. Saw him the other day. I'm going to say tight ends aren't as important because I always feel like in the background, and I'm not disagreeing that Ethan Davis, if he's at his best, would be a monstrous factor in Tennessee's development because he's like a wide receiver at tight end. But I still think that in the back of his pocket, Josh Heupel says to himself, if this Holden stays or Ethan Davis or whoever doesn't come through at tight end, then I feel like I can make do with 4 wide receivers, which we talked about a little bit last year when Tennessee had to replace Princeton Fant. Turns out McAllen Castles was fantastic and might make an NFL team. So that didn't come up last year, but I think it still could. Tennessee's most intriguing position group is tight end, gets a whopping 0% so far. Sorry, Caleb. Secondary, 30%. Quarterback, 36%. Running back, 27%. You mentioned the secondary. The secondary is very intriguing because that is the only position group that we can't give you a very good educated guess / hypothesis on who the starters will be. We did that yesterday talking about the corners, but do we know who the safeties are going to be? Caleb, if I put you on the spot immediately, who would you pick?
I mean, okay, I have my predicted starters already for the secondary, and you just tell me if I'm crazy. Okay.
And I'm not going to be able to call you crazy because I'm ignorant in this particular scenario. So I think you could be absolutely right. Go ahead.
I think Jacoby Thomas starts at free safety, the MTSU transfer. I think Boo Carter starts at strong safety. I think Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson take the 2 cornerback spots, and I think Jalen McMurray steps in at nickel.
I was completely with you till Jalen McMurray, and I'm not arguing. I'm just asking you why.
Because he's a veteran player. I see him as another Gabe Jeudy-Lally type. The transfer from Temple, very smart veteran player, maybe a little bit limited athletically, but as a smart player, the type of guy you kind of want to put on the field. You know, those type of players I'm talking about, Dave, the guys you like. Here's a name. Here's a throwback name. Think for defensive backs. Now, this guy was a linebacker, but think Ryan Carl for defensive backs. Remember, Ryan Carl was not physically meant to start at linebacker for Tennessee.
Not compared to the guys that came before him. Nowadays, he'd be fine. I think he could be a Keenan Pili type.
I don't think he's fast enough.
Okay, you're probably right.
Yeah, he was undersized.
He was one of my guys. I don't want to rip on Ryan Carl.
No, I mean, he's a good guy, but like he was a smart player, very smart player. Jalen McMurray, and by the way, Gabe Jeudy-Lally was that for the secondary, right? Gabe Jeudy-Lally was just like maybe a step short and an inch too small and a pound too light. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yes,
for the NFL?
I do.
But he was a very smart player, so he was a reliable nickel. I think Jalen McMurray is going to be that for Tennessee this year.
I want to give you the opportunity, if I may, to go ahead and sign up to Hooker's Corner, brought to you by our good friends at Sports Treasures. And then I'm going to tell you why Caleb's got it all wrong. You can vote on our YouTube page. Titan now has a vote at 8%, secondary 38%, quarterback 31%, running back 23%. I'm going to tell you why it is none of the ones we've really discussed. As a matter of fact, it's on the board, but we haven't even, I don't think, said the word yet. But let me go ahead and share with you that you can join Hooker's Corner, brought to you by our good friends at Sports Treasures, just $9.98 a month. We appreciate the donation that we just got. I think they call that a badge or whatever. We'd love for you to be a part of Hooker's Corner for just $9.98 a month. It'll have increased recruiting coverage. We'll be talking about David Sanders and Tennessee's newest recruit, the number 1 quarterback in 2026 that they might just get, and more. Also, you'll have some insight to me and Caleb, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures, over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Please tell them that Off the Hook Sports sent you. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. That is right down below. Facebook, Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. What about running backs? Let's just say, for instance, that Peyton Lewis is what I think he is, and that is a talented tailback who struggles a little bit in pass pro. You like Peyton Lewis, and you think he'll play a lot, but that would put him on the bench, right, if he struggles in pass pro?
I don't think it would, because it ain't like Dylan Sampson's worth the you-know-what in pass pro.
I'm assuming that Dylan Sampson with a year under his belt will be better. And I'm assuming that I will also take a step further and say some of that could have been Nico with some bad adjustments of the line.
No,
I don't know that.
No,
but, okay.
I saw Dylan Sampson whiff so badly on that block in the Citrus Bowl. There was no way it was an adjustment. Okay, there's no adjustment you needed.
Okay. That being said, if Tennessee doesn't have a playmaker at running back, is that a concern? Jalen Wright was a playmaker last year. He extended yards. Jabari Small, God bless him, he maximized the yards that he could get. But if a specific play blocked for 6 yards, he got about 6 yards. Jalen Wright would extend those 6-yard runs because of his power into 9, 10, 11, 12-yard runs or more. So if they don't have any sort of game breaker or any sort of guy that can get yards after contact, is that not disconcerting to you?
Not at all. I don't think it's a problem. And here's why. If you get those 6-yard runs, Heupel has shown this. He'll milk you down the field for those 6-yard runs. He's not afraid to do that. I mean, he will.
Okay, let me change gears.
Well,
you're right. Let me change gears. He's getting 1-yard runs, whereas Jalen Wright would have gotten 3 or 4-yard runs.
That's a problem.
Okay.
You need to get 3 or 4 yards in this offense every time you take the ball. But I feel like as long as this is where it comes to the interior blocking is so important that I feel like an average running back can get the 3 or 4 yards. This is why I say that, the Cooper Mazes and Javonte Spraggins. I mean, Dave, I got a question. Would you rather lose Dylan Sampson or Javonte Spraggins? You'd rather lose Dylan Sampson, wouldn't you? Contrary to what Derek Dooley would say.
Yeah, that was the dumbest comment ever when he said a running back makes an offensive line. I want to say I'd rather have Dylan Sampson. I may be higher on him, but I also don't know that the depth's there with Peyton and Cam Selden, who's not going to be 100%.
Heupel's offense is a waste without the interior blocking, though.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going, but is a guy not ready like Bison Lang to slide over to guard? Is a guy not ready like Shamarov? I mean, I think he's going to play tackle, but slide in the guard. So somebody has to be competently ready.
But there's a difference between filling a void and being elite. I think Javonte Spraggins is an elite blocker, and basically Javonte Spraggins and Cooper Mays will create 4-yard runs, 5-yard runs every time. So there won't be those 1-yard runs. They'll always be 5 or 6 yards. And that's going to, and again, the Heupel, the bread and butter is obviously the 70-yard bombs that he wants. But those 6-yard runs are how he sets those up. And he will live by them. If you commit to taking away the bombs, he will live by the 6-yard runs all the way down the field. He's not Spurrier. He's not going to get aggressive and impatient.
No, I agree with that. And what do you think Tennessee averaged last year in yards per carry? I'm just curious what you think.
Well, see, this is tricky with college because quarterback rushing stats are factored into the team rushing stats. But I'm looking it up now, and they averaged over 5 yards a carry.
Yeah, they averaged 5.5. I'm sorry. They averaged 4.96 yards a carry, so almost 5. The leader was Alabama at 5.57. So Tennessee came in at 8. Would they have been 8th without Jalen Wright's power? I'd argue no. I think they would have been lower, around about 12th, right behind Missouri at 4.1. I think he extended runs that much, and I don't know that Tennessee has that, and that is a major concern.
You're also forgetting the fact that you're also leaving out the fact that Cooper Mays missed the first 5 games. The running game isn't there without Cooper Mays. So, I mean, Cooper Mays and Devontae Sprague, I'm sorry. You lose Jalen Wright, Cooper Mays is fully healthy. Give me fully healthy Cooper Mays 100 out of 100 times.
I won't argue with that. Vote on the poll question right now. It's on our YouTube page. Tennessee's most intriguing position is tight end, secondary, quarterback, and running back. The show represented by our good friends at Banks and Jones. Boy, we had fun with T. Scott Jones yesterday, making fun of that weirdo guy that plays cornerback for LSU that likes to record himself doing funny stuff. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, the Vols' top 5 sophomores, correct?
No,
juniors up next. Stay tuned. Off the Sports. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, so question I have for you is Tennessee's top juniors that will head into this class. So let's start with number 5 as camp opens on Wednesday officially. Want to get your thoughts as well on the message board. So certainly check it out. What do you got, sir?
All right, so a guy who just missed that I actually think we'll see some. We just talked about tight ends, but he didn't make this list. Is a guy named Charlie Browder. I actually think Hyper will use him as a blocking tight end some this year, but I don't. He didn't make my top 5. Right at number 5, I was down to. It was a couple of defensive linemen, an edge rusher, and an interior lineman between Joshua Josephs and Jackson Moy, and I went with Joshua Josephs. And the reason I went with Joshua Josephs is I think he's going to be the starting defensive end on one side, whereas I think Jackson Moy is going to be a role player on the interior.
Who starts above Jackson Moy?
Amari Thomas and Elijah Simmons.
Jackson Moy may or may not start, but I'm glad Smoky Mountain Red got his shirt. Good. They've been a little getting at the Tennessee versus NCAA shirt. By the way, the gentleman earlier who gave us the fantastic gift, we appreciate that. If you join Hooker's Corner, you automatically get a T-shirt as a first-time member. Plus, you get an opportunity to win this autographed helmet by John Henderson, which is pretty awesome. I think you're underplaying Jackson Moy. And that's not me guessing. That's what I've been told. I've been told he's the transfer to watch.
Okay, so we know Amari's starting because they brought him to SEC Media Days. You don't bring a guy twice to SEC Media Days without expecting him to start.
That's a given.
And
lock it down.
Yes. So you think Elijah Simmons is a generational talent, the likes of which we've never seen. How does Jackson Moy beat either of them out if Elijah Simmons is healthy? Not to mention Omar Norman Lott.
There comes a time, and I hope I'm wrong, that I say to myself, this guy's injury prone. For whatever reason, it's the genetics. And I've got to use that history, Caleb, when I factor in who I'm projecting ahead. So I think Simmons could be a first-round pick if he's 100% healthy this year. First-round NFL pick. I don't think Jackson Moy will ever be that. But I think Jackson Moy is more likely to be 100% throughout the season. Okay,
that's fair. So would you have Jackson Moy over Joshua Josephs? Because Joshua Josephs, I think, is starting on the at defensive end on one side.
So far, out of the guys you mentioned, I have Jackson Moy above your guys.
Okay, so you have Jackson Moy ahead of Joshua Josephs.
Yes, I have him ahead of Joseph. So where are we? Number 4?
So now let's move to number 4. Number 4, and as much as I've trashed him, Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson's a top 5 junior on this team.
Hey now.
Finally getting some love for Dylan Sampson. This one's tough for me to argue with because I'm going to compare them all to Jackson Moy based off what I've heard. Dylan Sampson is more important than Jackson Moy given the depth, the defensive tackle position. But I'm telling you, he's going to be really good. You heard it here first on Off the Hook Sports. All right, who's next?
I got to laugh real quick when you talked about maybe Sampson whiffed on a block because of a Nico adjustment. That's like when Fulmer and Chambers were like, we weren't prepared for the quarterback draw when we faced LSU in the 2001 SEC title game. What do you have to prepare for with the quarterback draw? You're the 2 best defensive tackles in history. Just say tackle the quarterback when he runs.
Oh, I think it's a little bit more difficult than that. But anyway, the next best junior is.
Okay, so number 3 is Squirrel White. Squirrel White's going to be the starter in the slot, and he is going to. They thought he'd be Jalen Hyatt last year. I think he could be that this year. And by the way, one of the underrated things about Squirrel White, we always talk about his speed, Dave. He's got hands. That dude can catch.
I'm struggling with Squirrel White. I think this is a big offseason for him, a big camp, so that he doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Because the last thing you want to do is fall behind a Mike Matthews. I think
That's
Dante.
Positions.
I'm sorry.
Different positions. Mike Matthews is a wideout. Squirrel is in the slot. There's no competition for Squirrel in the slot.
No. I'm just saying in general, the last thing you want to do. Yeah, there's competition in the slot. They could still use Dante Thornton there. They could use Brazel there. I got a lot of names that I could throw at you, but I heard so many great things about Squirrel White, but he didn't have the impact last year. Was that his fault or was that the quarterback's fault? That's what we're going to find out. You just don't want to fall behind all of those guys. Not the same position as far as the receiver position, but I'm telling you, they would find a way. If they thought that Dante Thornton was suddenly the impact player he was supposed to be last year, they would find a way to get him on the field over Squirrel White if they thought he was significantly better.
I think Squirrel White should, and this is funny because he's African-American, but I think he should take a page out of Phil's playbook in Modern Family, if you guys ever watch that show, and make shirts that say, if you ain't white, you ain't right. Have y'all ever seen that episode?
No, but I will tell you one time we were trying to think of a name for Fred White's segment, and it ended up being called Football Friday with Fred. And I said, how about the white way? And he goes, no.
That would throw everybody up with Fred on the show.
That was an immediate no.
Oh, my gosh.
All right. I'll check on Squirrel's weight mead and David. I'll work on that. And
he's just not down with White. That's why he doesn't believe in Squirrel White. He's just not down with White.
All right. What else you got?
Number 2. Now, I just talked about Jalen McMurray, and I think he's going to be in the rotation. But number 2, I'm very high on Jacoby Thomas, the MTSU transfer. I think he's the best of the 3 transfers they got. Jermon McCoy in the secondary. Jermon McCoy, Jacoby Thomas, and Jalen McMurray. I think Jacoby Thomas is your McAllen Castles, comes from a smaller school, wants a chance to show himself, and is going to be a superstar in the secondary this year. I think Jacoby Thomas at free safety is going to be a massive upgrade over Wesley Walker, who left. Obviously, Andre Turrentine can't work out at safety. And they still have Jordan Thomas and Christian Harrison for depth, but I think Jacoby Thomas is going to be I think he might be an all-SEC safety.
You know, I'm going to agree with that, and I'm going to give you credit because I was worried the road we're going down because I like Moya so much. But so far, I've only got Moya as more of an impact than one of your guys, which means we're pretty much on the same page. So who's up next?
And number 1 is the most obvious number 1 in the history of number 1s. I'm not really going to pierce anybody's brains with this one.
James Pierce.
James Pierce Jr. James Pierce Jr. is number 1. Are you really going to disagree with me on that, Dave? Are you going to be like, well, I don't know.
No, I think we could have the discussion, is James Pierce the most valuable player on the team? I'm not saying he's not, but we could have the discussion. I could at least make the debate and make a pretty strong debate. Would you agree with that?
You could, in terms of, James Pierce is a rare talent, a rare freak talent. And it's not because edge rusher is not as valuable, but that is part of it. It's just there's depth behind him, but it is also edge rusher is not as valuable. Steve Spurrier's best team in South Carolina that went 11-2 was in the top 5, had Jadeveon Clowney. Jadavian Clowney wasn't the most valuable player on that team. Remember those South Carolina teams that were really good under Spurrier? Dave, would you even consider Clowney the most important player on any of those teams?
Well, yes, kinda. I mean, I really think they made. I think an elite defensive end pass rusher can take you from a good defense to a very good defense. So maybe let's do that on Monday.
You have to be good on the other side, though. If you're not good on the other side, you can totally neutralize an elite pass rusher.
You can be slightly average on the other side. I want to tell you a quick story, if I may. So, my mom eligible for Medicare, and it is the biggest pain in the rear. You can't even imagine all you have to deal with, all you have to fill out. Well, Medicare Misty is there for you. Insurance you need, options to choose from, agents you can trust. Medicare Misty. Again, Medicare Misty. And coming up, Vols gold medals in the Olympics. They've won a lot. And I'm sorry, guys, but those incredible non-conference games at Neyland Stadium aren't going to happen anymore. And I'm going to tell you why in 30 seconds.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
One of my favorite memories of Neyland Stadium, it's not an SEC game. I'm a favorite because I went to school there at the time, and I knew some of the guys. It was definitely the 1998 Florida game. Okay, you're hugging. I'm an objective member of the media, Caleb, but when your friend like Steve Johnson just is able to beat Florida, the defensive back, it's hard not to give him a hug and say congrats, right? You're literally in the same classes with him. So I miss though the Miamis, the Notre Dames, the Oregons showing up. And I think that's a thing of the past. I want to tell you why. First, it's almost Olympic time. As a matter of fact, I believe the opening ceremonies are about to start. So let's get to our stat of the day, which has to do with the Olympics.
No, this isn't this day.
Oh, this day in sports history? I'm sorry. This day in sports history, and it's brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. This day in Tennessee sports history
is because of the Olympics. We're shouting out a couple of notable Olympic moments in Tennessee history. The torch lighting is tonight, Friday night, and there are two that there's been a lot of great gold medal moments in Tennessee history. You could talk about David Edgar winning the first gold ever for Tennessee, the swimmer back in 1972, but there's really two I want to tout. The first is Ernie Grunfeld.
University of Tennessee didn't have a gold medal till 1972.
Not until 72.
That surprises me.
The first I want to tout is Ernie Grunfeld. I did not know this story of Ernie Grunfeld, Dave. Maybe you did. From the obviously Bernie and Ernie show, Bernard King. He won gold in the 70s. He was part of the team that won gold in the 76 Olympics, coached by Dean Smith. He had just become an American citizen right before winning gold. Apparently, he came from Romania, and I did not know that his family was Holocaust survivors. And that's another.
Yeah, I didn't know that latter part.
I did not know that at all.
For some reason, I thought he was born in America. I didn't know he had to become a U.S. citizen, but that's pretty phenomenal.
Yes. Becomes a U.S. citizen and then goes and wins gold for the U.S. I mean, that's a great story. The other one, 40 years ago this year, the Team USA women's basketball dynasty began in 1984 with none other than Pat Summitt coaching the team. And she brought on Cheryl Miller, which helped Cheryl Miller propel into stardom. And they won the gold. They've won it ever since. They've never lost. Pat Summitt played on the 76 team that won silver. She comes back 8 years later to coach the team, wins gold. Dave, that 84 Olympics with Pat Summitt, it is so underrated what that did for women's basketball and the growth of it, and for Pat Summitt's profile and resume in that moment. And I mean, it elevated so much of the women's game. You can trace everything about the growth of women's basketball to that 84 Olympics that Pat Summitt won gold while coaching Cheryl Miller. It all goes back to her doing that in 1984.
No. All right. So if you want to check out offthehooksports.com, we appreciate that. We try to bring you some interesting conversation there if you're the reading type. I mean, I can't say anything. I've written a book and I think I've only read 3. So, but we would encourage you to check that out. We've got recruiting news up there and a quarterback that Tennessee very well may land in the 2026 class. They just keep getting more talented in that quarterback room. But wanted to turn to something that Lincoln Riley said. Lincoln Riley had this quote to say, and it was, let me find that. All right. Bama was ahead of the curve for years, I thought, on how they scheduled in the non-conference. They would occasionally hit the marquee non-conference game. They'd play 2 other not very good teams. They'd play one late, so they got essentially a little bit of a bye week there late in the season. They didn't schedule for the fans. They scheduled to win championships. We can do the best thing. Schedule to win championships. That includes a rivalry game for all that comes with that and all that means. But if you get in the position, you've got to make a decision on what the priority is. He was asked about Notre Dame. In other words, South Carolina and Notre Dame is not going to happen anymore. It's not. So my question to you, and it's on the YouTube page right now, a poll question, a new poll question. I'd rather see the Vols pound a bad opponent or play a good team and take our chances. What do you think, without looking, what do you think most people will say? Because we already have several votes on board right now.
Pound a bad opponent. Am I right?
No. So far, just a few votes. It's 100% the other way. Play a good team and take chances.
I'd like to applaud them for saying that because they're right.
Well, I would like to applaud them, but they're wrong. And if you believe that, you're wrong. And I want to tell you why. Because there are 12 slots for the playoff. How many conference games do you have now, Caleb?
Well, the SEC still has 8 because Greg Sankey doesn't know how to get the SEC in line.
Right? How many do they have? 8, right?
8. Big Ten has 9, but SEC has 8.
Right. So you got 4 other games. You're going through the SEC, the toughest conference, and I know you would agree with that. Caleb scheduled the 4 biggest patsies in the world. And I tell you who I would go ahead and sign up for the next 10 years. Chattanooga to keep the money in state, Memphis to keep the money in state, and maybe leverage a basketball deal out of it, although that's probably going to take Rick Barnes or Anthony Hardaway going away. Austin P, MTSU. I'd keep the money in state. The home games would be a ton of fun because they're going to blow everybody out. And there you go. And you're going to be in the college football playoff as long as you don't lose more than 2 games at 10-2. And with where this program's going, I think that's a very safe assumption. I know you think I'm wrong. Caleb, can you do me a favor and tell me exactly why in 15 seconds as we remind you that Ray Varner Ford in Clinton is where you need to go to shop for your new vehicle?
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Why am I wrong, Caleb Calhoun? I'll remind you to please hit the like and subscribe button. 4 patsies, line them up. I'll knock them down.
Well, you're actually wrong twice. Because even if you were going to play your way and do 4 patsies, you wouldn't schedule Memphis anymore. They're favored to win the AAC. You don't want to schedule a good group of 5 team. You got to schedule a bad one. You don't want to schedule one that could be dangerous.
Memphis would be you're right, but Memphis would be the closest I would get to a quality opponent. NC State is rated higher than Tennessee. I looked at the future schedules that were out there, and we'll get to that, but there are some programs out there that don't need to be scheduled. Why is NC State on the schedule? You gain nothing from playing them.
Let me explain. That was just the first thing you were wrong about. Okay.
I got a little excited.
You're doubly wrong. Okay. You were wrong thinking Memphis would be a patsy if you want to schedule them. If you schedule, you got to schedule bad. Number 2.
Bad. Like Chattanooga bad?
Yes. Your argument held more weight when it was a 14 playoff or when it was a 2-team playoff. Because back then, it wasn't about the schedule strength. It was a loss knocked you out. Period. End of story. And so you wanted to schedule as easy as possible. In a 12-team playoff, Dave, the committee is going to do this like the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee in basketball. They are going to massively hold it against you if you schedule patsies. So if Tennessee does what you're saying, or if any school in the SEC did what you're saying, the committee wouldn't let them in with an 11-1 record. They would have to go, or maybe 11-1.
There is no way an SEC team. If you schedule 4 patsies.
10, I meant to say 10-2. The committee would never let them in with a 10-2 record. You have to go 11-1 if you schedule 4 patsies. That's what the committee is going to do. So I'm telling you this right now. You are basically, if you do what you're saying, Dave, you are narrowing your path through the playoff, because if you schedule 2 tough out-of-conference games, 9-3 is getting you into the playoff. If you schedule 1 tough out-of-conference game, 9-3 might get you into the playoff. If you schedule none, 10-2 won't get you into the playoff. You have to go 11-1. I'm telling you that right now.
I don't believe that. And here's why. Because Tennessee's a sexy team. And you're going to let's say Mississippi State. I'm just picking Mississippi State out of random. Let's say Mississippi State and Tennessee both go 10-2 in the same year. They're going to take Tennessee. And I don't care if Mississippi State has a win over non-SEC team. A win over Ohio State on their record. They're going to take Tennessee.
So you're acknowledging that Tennessee is going to get favorable treatment because, a lot of Tennessee fans are like, everybody hates us. Well, fans of every team are.
Yes, there are about 15 programs that you have to look at with their fan base. And if you don't give them preferential treatment, you're stupid.
You're acknowledging that this playoff is not merit-based. It's entertainment-based. It's
not 100%. Yes, this is all entertainment. But it's, okay, I believe it's 90% merit-based. What would you say?
I would probably agree with you on everything you're saying. But what I am saying is if Mississippi State went and played Michigan.
And by the way, they couldn't because Tennessee and Mississippi State play each other. You might want to give me an Auburn or something.
Yeah, okay. So if Auburn went and played like Michigan, well, I would never give Auburn. Auburn haven't they always been notorious for the worst out of conference schedules possible?
Just pick a team in the way.
Okay, if Auburn goes and plays Michigan and Florida State in non-conference, and Tennessee does
That's two. Don't give me two.
Fine. If Auburn goes and plays Michigan, and Tennessee does what you said, and both teams are 10-2, they are going to put Auburn in. They are going to weigh that. You are so wrong on this.
Well, first of all, Auburn, we changed the example. Mississippi State has a smaller fan base. Auburn has a bigger fan base. So that's not my greatest comparison. How about let's go Ole Miss? If Ole Miss is 10-2 and Tennessee is 10-2 and they played 4 patsies and let's say Ole Miss beat Michigan, are you saying that listen,
yes.
I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I believe that you could make an argument. Well, Tennessee is averaging more points than any team in the nation. You could make an argument. Some sort of argument will be out there that you could make that Tennessee should go in over Ole Miss with the same record, and I firmly believe they would, patsy or not.
There's another layer to this, by the way, because schedule strength also factors in who has the harder SEC schedule. Like if you're Texas versus Oklahoma this year in football, I mean, like, again, if you have Texas's SEC schedule, you need to schedule big out of conference. If you have Oklahoma's SEC schedule, schedule 4 patsies. That's another layer.
But these schedules are made years in advance.
I agree, and that's why it's hard to predict. It's going to be held against teams. One, you're assuming that it'll come down to Tennessee and Ole Miss. It could come down to Tennessee and Auburn, or Tennessee and Alabama, or Tennessee and some blue blood Big Ten. Okay, it could come down to 2 blue blood programs, and then they will look at the schedule strength. And if one team scheduled very easy out of conference, it's going to work against them. Dave, this happens in college basketball. You've seen it. Do you remember the 2000 Georgia basketball team that got into the NCAA tournament with a 16-14 record because they scheduled so difficult?
Adam says, why is it always a great opponent or cupcake? Where are the middle of the road Power 5 schools?
Well, Dave picked that with me.
Well, not purposely.
Oh.
But like Pitt, to me, that's the middle of the road.
That's the most dangerous.
I know. That's the ones I don't want the middle of the road Power 5 schools. That's the exact ones, Adam, I don't want. Now, so far, everybody agrees with you. It's never been 100% before, so we'll see if that.
There's another factor. Can I add another factor?
Yeah, let me just update the poll. I'd rather see the Vols pound a bad opponent, play a good team, and take chances. 100% on your side. We've never had a poll go 100%, so help me, peeps.
You talk about, thinking politicking and who's the sexy team in the playoff. The College Football Playoff Committee, that's a TV show, the playoff. But the entire college football season is a TV show. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Yes.
They're not going to be happy at teams who schedule patsies out of conference, which takes away potential marquee games during the regular season that they would be able to cover and generate ratings. So they might work around the clock to disincentivize teams to do that because they want those marquee games in the regular season.
Okay. This comment, I think, says everything. And if you've been around football a lot, you see how beat up these guys get throughout the year. And I think so far it's the top comment on the board. Brought to you by Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. Support our sponsors. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. Please support our sponsors. Stop by and say, hey, we're on Cherokee Boulevard. I'm at Quality Tire Pros. Dave Hooker said, hey, Bo. That's qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Chip Godfrey said, team needs some down games to recover. Absolutely. I agree with that. Now, Trevor says, I'm sick of cupcake games, but I've seen these guys beat the bejesus out of them, and they need a break. I think that's why Tennessee was so good in bowl games and why they had so many people attend bowl games. It's because they closed every season with Vanderbilt and Kentucky, and they looked darn good no matter what happened against Florida in September.
It's also why Tennessee's never had a Heisman winner.
So your final say is, I think that's a factor. So your final say would be 3 cupcakes and what?
Here's the way I've always said it. I've always said 1 Power 5 elite team that's like a marquee game that like we all want to see. 1 upper level group of 5 team. You know what I mean? Like you brought up Memphis, you know what I mean? Like something like that. So like a Power 5 game or an upper level group of 5 game, a lower level group of 5 game. And what I'm talking about at that point, I'm talking about a Mack school or somebody that goes like 3-9, and then 1 FCS school. And by the way, I'm for the FCS games, 1 a year. And the reason I'm for them is because I don't want scholarship opportunities for lower level college football players to dry up, Dave. And what people don't realize is that 1 FCS game a year, that funds their whole season.
Yeah, you can want and hope, but that's going to go away.
I know.
And I hate it too, but you not both know it.
It's so funny that people complain about that. I'm like, you guys complain about it, but you want opportunities for kids too. It's like, this is how they fund their football programs. Tennessee writes UT Chattanooga a whatever $1 million check. Chattanooga takes that and funds their whole season with that.
I've never heard anybody complain about that. I mean,
people want the FCS games to go. I'm like, no, 1 FCS game a year is perfectly reasonable.
Okay. Well, I don't know who you guys is, but I haven't heard anybody complain specifically about that. Now, My second option, as opposed to 4 cupcakes that I like way better than yours, is 3 cupcakes and 1 absolutely elite opponent. Not an NC State, or let's look at Tennessee's future non-conference schedule. So it's Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State, UTEP this year. Next year, it's Syracuse, CTSU, UAB, New Mexico State. In 2026, it's Furman, Nebraska, Western Michigan, then Nebraska in 27, West Virginia in 28, Washington in 29 and 30. That's a long ways away. We don't know that that'll actually end up happening, but Washington, West Virginia, and Nebraska are not the teams I would play. I would go to the table with a big-time program and say, let's do this, just like Alabama did. The Alabama-Miami game, even though it ended up being a total blowout, was at the beginning 2 years ago, got a ton of play. So if you want to do something along the lines like that, I'm totally good with it. But the mid-level Power 5 team that can prove something and make their season by beating you is the one team that I don't want to play.
You absolutely don't want that. You absolutely don't want that.
Like NC State.
Yes, you need to go all in. I mean, it's crazy to think looking back. I think Tennessee thought they were getting a mid-level BCS team when they faced Syracuse in 98, right? And they didn't realize they were getting a Big East champion that was capable of beating anybody that year. And,
right. Well,
that
Syracuse team, though, was still reeling from losing Daryl Moose Johnston, who went on to have a fantastic career with the Dallas Cowboys. I worked that in. Rob Conrad replaced him. I thought I'd see if I could work in a Dallas Cowboys reference for the second time. How about 2 minutes?
I'm a Cowboys fan. You guys think you're relevant, and no one else talks about you.
Oh, I know, but you got to admit I do a good job of not throwing it in there all the time.
No, you do. You do. Man, Dave, you're such a bandwagoner. Cowboys and a Yankee fan and a Celtics fan. You just picked all the winners when you were growing up.
No, I didn't. They were horrible. No. They were all horrible in the 80s except for the Celtics. Every team I liked was
darn good.
And it was the Celtics were really good.
Yeah,
but the other teams were bad. I'm not going to defend my fandom. But the problem was we had 3 channels back then, Caleb, and only the Steelers, Cowboys, Dolphins, and Raiders were on TV. In 2 minutes, you've got more viewing options nowadays. Tennessee, it'll be the stat of the day, and also this entertainment district. I want to take a look at that. Is that something you're excited about, or are you more just about ball? 2 minutes off the hook sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game,
It's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Oh, we want to get to the stat of the day. Caleb, what do you have for us? A stat of the day brought to you by our good friend Rick Terry at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Rick Terry Jewelry Design has those fire opals, very affordable, fantastic products for game days, but they have more than that. They've got some Garmin watches. And listen to what they said. They said, hey, Dave, how about this? How about we give you a Garmin watch to give away? And I said, well, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go ahead and do that. So that is what we are going to do, and we're excited about that. It's Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. And Caleb, tell us more about it. I'll go ahead and pull up how you enter. The key is you've got to be a member of Hooker's Corner, okay? But you can be a free member, and you have to be subscribed to the channel. So when we hit 8,000 subscribers, Caleb, our lucky fans will win what?
Oh, they will win a watch worth, I believe, $1,000.
Over
guys.
$1,000.
Over
And there's the cue. Yeah, and we'll also give away our John Henderson mini autographed helmet later today. You do have to be a paid member to win that. We had a couple of people join yesterday. We greatly appreciate that. Maybe a newsletter coming down the pike, huh? Quite possibly. That could be the case. Off the Hook Sports and offthehooksports.com, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. The Entertainment District.
Wait, don't you put the stat of the day?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. The stat of the day. Stat of the day.
Well, I actually rerouted. I had one, but now I'm switching it up because it's the first day of the Olympics. So I want to play a little game with you. And maybe we should play it with the message board and we can do something for the winner. But who gets closest? Guess how many guess how many total gold medals Tennessee has won in history at the Olympics. Tennessee products have won.
In the history?
Yes, of Tennessee sports. Gold medals.
And put the over-under at 28.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Are you going over or under? You yourself.
I'm going to go under.
Okay. Should we give the message board a chance or should I just give it to you?
Give it to me.
You were very good with your over-under number, but it's over. But barely. 30. Tennessee has 30 gold medalists all time in the Olympics.
Okay.
23 different Tennessee products have won 30 gold medals.
Okay. Let's turn to this. That's a pretty good number. I wonder where that ranks with other schools. Maybe we can find that out by the end of the program. All right. So what do you make of this new Neyland Entertainment District that they're putting together? Maybe we have pictures of that we can pull up a little bit later. But basically, it's going to be a Marriott built on top of the parking lot at G10. And if you're familiar with Atlanta and the Battery around the Braves Stadium, I think it's going to be similar to that. By the way, is this week or next week, they had a University of Tennessee Day at the Braves Stadium where you could get like a little cooler thing with the Tennessee insignia, but you had to make a donation to the athletic department to get the ticket. Anyway, I thought that was either crazy or really good marketing. I haven't decided. But basically, if you're familiar with the Battery around the Braves field, it's going to be very similar. So, Caleb, love it, hate it, or wait and see?
Wait and see. I'm very mixed on it. I have to be honest. And Trevor took the comment right out of my mouth. There is a little bit of crapping on history with this entertainment district. I'm not against entertainment districts, but where you said it, it's literally, you won't be able to see Neyland Stadium from parts of the Tennessee River. And I mean, the backdrop of Neyland Stadium on the Tennessee River is part of what makes Knoxville's fall setting the best. I get it. I understand it, but I don't want a giant new Marriott just obstructing the view of Neyland Stadium. I mean, this is I'm worried that America is going back to what it did architecturally in the 70s and 60s, where they just obstructed so much great turn-of-the-century architecture to acquiesce to the suburban lifestyles that everybody became a part of, with hideous buildings and just making everything about driving to places and not making anything walkable anymore and just wrecking cities in the process. And I'm sorry, that's a total tangent for a different day that I went on, but I just want to point this out with something like Neyland. That you really have to put a giant Marriott right in front of the stadium, between the stadium and the river? Like, you really want to do that?
My concern is, and you brought this up when we spoke earlier this morning, is the parking issue, is the tailgating issue. And I remind you that Hooker's Hangouts, one Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org, AsiaCafe.org. It is right down below. Best Asian cuisine you're going to find in Knoxville. But Caleb, where are all of these people going to park? And I know that's been semi-addressed, and it was addressed in the Knoxville News Sentinel. There's all these things that you can do, but hit the like and subscribe button if you absolutely hate hearing, which I have before, oh, you're going to have to park at the ag campus. I mean, that to me, the parking issue, bringing more people downtown in a highly congested area, frankly, makes no sense to me. I would have a regular trolley system from the Strip to Neyland Stadium, and that would have been in my entertainment district, because for goodness sake, if you haven't been on the Strip on Cumberland, they've really messed it up. It has no more bars. It has no more restaurants. It's all student housing. They should have been ahead of it, nipped that in the bud, and have the ball trolley that goes from Cumberland, when it had the bars, and it had all the restaurants, to the stadium. Have it constantly running. But instead, you're just going to increase traffic, and at the end of the day, you're going to increase cost, because I can tell you the Battery in Atlanta is a draw in and of itself. It doesn't even matter if they were playing a basketball game there, or sorry, a baseball game there. It doesn't matter. You could still go down there and have a good time. Caleb, you and I could go down there and have a heck of a time. So that's just going to drive the price up on everything, and you're going to be paying more. I'm all for being forward thinking, and I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but this sounds like throwing gas on a fire that's burning just fine, or putting another log on a fire that's just crackling away in the middle of winter. I don't understand the obsession with this Neyland project. I don't.
This is what they want. And because they go to Alabama and they don't, and they're jealous of what they see in Tuscaloosa in this regard. And yes, people are going to get mad at me because I said Tennessee's jealous of Alabama, but in this regard, they are. Alabama Strip, Dave. You've been to Tuscaloosa. The bars, they're like 2 blocks from the stadium. You hang out on Alabama Strip and you're 2 blocks from the stadium, and all the tailgating is right around there. One of the problems with Tennessee, and there's really no way to fix it because of just the way the campus evolved over time, and it's no one's fault, but the tailgate scene for Knoxville is not centralized at all.
Let's just go ahead and call it like it is. It's horrible because it's a mountainous area. It's a hilly area, I should say. And it has a city right next to the campus. I mean, it's bad. I've been to all the SEC stadiums with the exception of Missouri, A&M, Texas, and now Oklahoma. And it is right up there with the worst as far as
it is. I mean, now the football Saturday, like Neyland Stadium, right around there, the backdrop, best backdrop for a football Saturday in the fall possible.
Agree.
But the tailgate scene is one of the worst in the SEC. And it is, and you're right. It's because there's a city. And also, like, think about it, the Strip. You got to walk a long ways from the Strip to the stadium. And a lot of people tailgate on the Strip. It's all over the place where people do tailgate. And I think they're trying to centralize it. But you're right. How do you centralize it when you've just limited parking? Now, I want to be one of these people. This is my tangent. I'm okay with limited parking because I'm not a fan of so many people driving in this country as it is. I think we need to make things more walkable in this country, and we need to make it easier for people to get to places without having to drive. So I love your idea of a trolley, Dave. That is awesome, because I think we need to, I, in general, think a problem with American culture is we've lost our sense of community because we built everything around driving. And I would love to encourage people to have things next to the stadium where they can walk and things like that. I'm with you. Just accept, if you're Tennessee, that you're not going to have the best tailgate scene in the SEC, and there's not much you can do. Revitalize the strip with fun restaurants and bars, tailgates in the parking lots behind there, and have a trolley that goes straight to the stadium. Like that, have a series of trolleys that regularly pick you up and take you to the stadium that you can just hop on and hop off.
I'm all for that. I think that's a better idea than what they're going to do. But I mean, it's going to happen. Listen, you and I have slightly different views based off what you just said on driving. I love driving. I love cars, but I don't like sitting in traffic. I think you and I would agree with that. I don't like seeing red lights sitting in front of me, and that's what's going to happen. And don't tell me there's not going to be growing pains. There are. Apex Apparel Group Design. Get 15% off your first order if you call Tyler or mention Off the Hook Sports. Design, brand, and market with Apex Apparel Group Design. Again, 15% off your first order for your business. That's right, your business. And they can do the spirit wear as well. They can do shirts, hats, koozies, whatever you need. Please call Tyler and tell him Off the Hook Sports sent you for your business. Any promotional item you need, 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. And the other thing that is a little bit frustrating to me is I love football. I told you I woke up at 3 a.m. and couldn't sleep one night and watched James Pierce highlights, watched James Pierce game film. I don't know, and I want to hear from the message board on this. What is it like when you take your family? Does the missus need something else? Do the kids need something else to be entertained? Those that go to Neyland Stadium, is it falling short of that? Because I know they've added all the televisions where you don't miss anything if you go to the concession stand. I know they've added more restrooms, but what's the experience like at Neyland Stadium? And do we need a Marriott? And there's going to be a bunch of clubs there too and places to party. So Caleb, you go from including the people that aren't tailgating, that aren't going to the game, that are tailgating. How many people do you think are in that little 10-block area on an average Saturday? It's more than 100,000 because a lot of people just like to tailgate and don't go to the game, right?
Yeah.
So
yes. And some people tailgate and get too drunk and then forget to go to the game.
True. Been there, younger man. 125,000 at least. So if you build all these bars and stuff, is that going to be 150,000 with less parking?
And here's the other thing. If older people don't like it, and college kids who may like it are broke because they're in college.
Oh, college kids will not be able to afford anything down there.
Nothing.
No.
I don't know who this is for. And
Caleb,
I mean,
if you go to the Battery in Atlanta, you better go ahead and say to yourself, I'm going to spend a C spot. I'm going to spend $100. And I mean by yourself, not even with your lovely wife. I mean, it's $25 to park. And I don't know who is going to go down there, Caleb, when there's not a game.
And you know what's so funny about you saying this? And Travis just brought it up because he said kind of like Broadway on Nashville. When people try to create a culture that is manufactured. I'm going to tell you guys just this quick story, having been born and raised in Memphis. Last year in Nashville was actually my first time staying overnight for a period of time in Nashville in about 20 years. And the last time I did it, I'd stayed on Broadway. I was going to a Titans game in 2005. And I thought Broadway during that time, Dave, very authentically captured Nashville in the music scene, didn't it? 20 years ago?
Yes.
I went to Broadway when I was on Broadway last year for SEC Media Days. I'm like, this is just any random city with a bunch of bars on a street now. There's no culture. I'm like, you're putting on a cowboy hat and playing the live music, but there's no culture on Broadway anymore in Nashville at all. They were so obsessed with overdeveloping it that you don't even feel like you're in Nashville. And I have friends who came down during SEC Media Days for the I think it was the Ed Sheeran concert at the time. And they're like, I thought it'd be like more country music. I didn't think it, not like hearing more, but they all were said they thought it'd be like more authentic country. And they're like, no, it's fake. And I'm like, that's what they did. They manufactured it and they ruined Broadway, a historic, beautiful street in Nashville. Because I thought it was like Beale Street when I was younger, and it's not like Beale Street anymore. And you're with the Knoxville Entertainment District, you're taking away from the culture of the backdrop of the Smoky Mountains at Neyland Stadium, which is the most beautiful setting in all of college football.
So our poll question is this. I blanked the Neyland Stadium Entertainment Center. Love, hate, I want to wait and see.
I'm talking myself into hating it more now.
53% say want to wait and see. Here's the other thing. Could this be Danny White's first big mistake? I mean, really, should an athletic director be pushing for something like this? This gets pretty involved with private enterprise, private business. And I know that he is incredibly talented in that regard based off his resume. But Caleb, man, should an athletic director be pushing for having buildings built?
I think this is evidence. This is the first bit of evidence of Danny White's experience being an athletic director at a smaller school trying to build a brand. And as you know, Dave, there is a difference between trying to build a brand and trying to maintain a brand. Tennessee is maintaining a brand, is it not? It is a brand. Like if whenever Phil Knight passes away and whoever becomes the CEO of Nike, they don't need to come in and be like, I need new ideas for Nike. No, you just need to figure out how to keep Nike ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Like,
and Southside Brewer, I appreciate you say don't care should be an option. But if you go to the games, you're going to care if you have to park 5 square miles away.
Which is why there should be the trolley. You brought it up, a trolley. Mass transit in Knoxville.
And you know what you do? You call it a volley. Jump on the volley.
Oh my gosh, and Nico Iamaleava playing volleyball is a billboard on the side. Dave, we have just come up with an amazing, let's start a business right now. The Knoxville Volley.
Trevor says Disneyland Danny, he's just waiting for Danny to put in a lazy river somewhere.
No, that's a great point. That's an amazing point. And by the way, he was at UCF for 3 years where Disneyland is because it's in Orlando. This is what I'm not a fan of the battery, Dave. I'm going to be honest with you in Atlanta because you tout the battery. I thought Turner was better. Turner was incorporated into the history of downtown Atlanta.
Yeah. I'm not touting it as I like it. I don't like it. I like Turner better.
Yeah. DC just tried this. They tried to move the Wizards out of DC, the Verizon Center, which for those of you who don't know is in the heart of Gallery Place, the perfect spot for Washington sports. And they tried to move it into Virginia and build this whole entertainment district. And luckily, the people of Virginia voted it down because they're like, I don't want that out here. And they were all like, we could just go into the city to see the Wizards play. We don't want them coming out here. So, I think I don't understand. It takes away so much from the character of places. Part of what I love about sports stadiums and historic sports stadiums, Dave, I don't know how you feel about this. I love sports stadiums that are incorporated into the history of the area they're in.
I like that. Yes.
Like, yes.
I'm good. I'm good with that. The Neyland Stadium was not an incredibly exciting place to watch a game unless it was close for a long time. And they tried the third down for what? And that was just pure stupidity. And they've gone to the lights and the explosions from the fireworks and everything. And I'll be honest with you, I think they've got it pretty darn perfect. So if you're asking me, love it, hate it, wait and see, I just wouldn't change a thing.
Mark has the best solution. Mark Carter. Build it across the river and then build the bridge trolley. Have a bridge and trolley. You can walk across the bridge to the stadium.
The Brawley.
Take a trolley. The Brawley, no. Or no, just a walkable bridge. Build a walkable bridge across. There is a walkable bridge across the river, right? A walking bridge across the river.
It's a train track.
Okay. Build another
You shouldn't walk across that, probably.
Never mind. Have a trolley that goes across, but also build a walking bridge across the river and have it on the other side. And oh my gosh, Mark, you should be in business. You should be in developing. This is genius. Build it across the river.
You know, Mark's probably right, but you want to hear the sad part about it? Because that's where Cooper Mays lives. The other side of the river is almost full with student housing and luxury condos for people that want something in the city because they usually live out in the country. I mean, it is almost full. I'm not saying you couldn't do it. I love the idea, but you would have to stop some stuff like now, like tomorrow, and say,
you're right.
Stop building stuff because we're going to build an entertainment district. Stat of the day: there are 3 Vols who have 26 career rushing touchdowns or more. We're going to try to guess them after this. Also, a big recruiting weekend, and Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning are going at it, which you just love to see. 2 minutes, Caleb Calhoun, Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
If you do me one quick favor, I'd greatly appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that like button or subscribe. You can pick. We greatly appreciate that. And it is time for our stat of the day, talking some Tennessee running backs. And Tennessee's running backs will be one of the most compelling storylines in practice, which begins next week. We'll have it covered for you on offthehooksports.com. Looking forward to some one-on-one interviews because those press conferences are awful. The stat of the day is brought to you by Don Self at State Farm. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their business on taking care of the customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126. Go to donself.net, donself.net. If he can't service you with State Farm, he'll get you to somebody that can, no matter what area of the country you're in. And I say this a lot, but I mean it. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. So reach out to Don, 423-396-2126. The number is just below. Caleb, the stat of the day, 3 running backs over 26 career rushing TDs?
No, right at 26. And this is in honor of July the 26th.
Okay.
There are 3 running backs who have 26 career touchdowns.
Okay. So what is the record?
The record is, I believe, held by Gene McKeever, who had I mean, this is way before any of our times, but Gene McKeever for a career had 37 rushing touchdowns. James Stewart is second with 35. Ready for this, Dave? Rushing touchdowns. Josh Dobbs is third, 32.
It's pretty surprising. I wonder where Nico will end up on that list. I don't think as high as a lot of people think, because I think he's going to scare people with his arm to the point that he's not going to have to run a lot. I think he's going to be that good with his arm. Nevertheless, 3 with 26. Well, I'm going to have trouble guessing 26, but to throw it out there, I will say Little Man Stewart, Travis Henry, and Arian Foster.
You're 1 of 3, not at all up to your usual standard, Dave. I told you, Little Man Stewart has 35.
Hey, 1 in 3 gets you in the Hall of Fame, by the way. Major League Baseball.
Yes, this isn't the Major League Baseball. So it is Travis Henry, and I was shocked by one of these. Reggie Cobb. That's not who I'm shocked by, but Reggie Cobb. And one of, I think, the best, somebody you covered, Dave, and arguably one of the best people to have covered, Montario Hardesty.
Okay.
Is Montario's senior year with Lane Kiffin not one of the greatest senior year stories of a Tennessee football player? A guy who just waited and fought through injuries and couldn't get on the field and gets his shot and just balls out.
Yes. We use a couple of words around here too often, generational and special. But I do believe that he could have been a special back had he not had the knee injuries. And I do believe that he went out there and played at times when he shouldn't have played. So you talk about the great all-time running backs. We talk about sometimes talent like a Chuck Webb, but let's not forget toughness and what could have been with a guy like Montario Hardesty. And let's also not forget guys like Jalen Hurd that he just decided not to use if you're just going to go talent. But I'll take a Hardesty any day over a guy that's more talented, because Hardesty had a ton of talent. He just was beat up from the day he showed up on campus and kept getting beat up more and more and more. Yes.
Sorry, just last thing. Hardesty and Travis Henry, who are both on this list, they're probably the 2 hardest runners in Tennessee history, right? I mean, guys who ran hard and who embraced contact and were willing to fight for the injury. Hardesty and Travis Henry.
I would have Jamal in that conversation.
I don't think Jamal ran that hard. I think he was just really good.
Oh, no. He ran angry. No, he ran people over. And that's
99, he ran lazy.
No, there's no question. 99, he ran lazy. But you're asking me the hardest runners, I guess, when they run the hardest?
No, I mean,
he was ready for the NFL. And he had
guys who they embraced contact and they wanted to run over people. Basically,
Jamal Lewis ran for 2,000 yards in the NFL. There's no way he didn't embrace contact. Now, if you want to rip his 99 season, that's fine. But he is one of the hardest runners in the history of the game. When he wants,
I thought he was more of an elusive runner. You say hard. I thought he was more of a almost Barry Sanders type. Points.
Well, no. Well, he was like 240 pounds. I think people were bracing for the contact because they got ran over earlier, so the juke was open. I thought
okay.
Yeah, I thought he ran like.
See, I always thought Travis Henry ran harder than Jamal Lewis. Jamal Lewis was a better running back.
Consistently over his career, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think Travis Henry ever lost a yard on a carry.
And what you said about the 99 season, no arguments. That guy was ready for the NFL and may or may have not been high after the Kentucky game.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Why are you laughing about that?
I'm sorry, Travis on the message board is. That's a good comment right there, Travis. I love it.
We're not going to repeat that one. I thought you were laughing at the Jamal Lewis thing.
No, I'm laughing at Travis.
Guest of this program swears that he might have been stoned after the Kentucky game. Remember, that was the game that Travis Henry got hurt and Jamal Lewis wasn't expecting to play at all.
And he fumbled like 3 times in the second half, yes.
Mm-hmm. Just saying, a guy after practice. I don't know of weed that lasts that long, because if you smoked it before, it would have to last like for 4 hours. I don't know.
Might have been hungover.
This guy's pretty sure it was weed. Like, and somebody that we trust. And I've never seen him that sure of something. And he was. All right. But anyway, some smart boys getting into it. I'm sorry. Some Saban boys getting into it. Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning. What can you tell us about those guys? They should get along. They've coached together forever. But now at two of the top programs in the nation, one the preeminent program, they can't seem to get along.
Yes, and it was a little bit of a weird shot. So Kirby Smart started this. He said that he joked that he would love to get some of that NIL money from Nike founder and co-founder and Oregon alum Phil Knight, based on what Phil Knight is doing at Oregon. Dan Lanning responds jokingly, I think it's impressive that guys like Kirby have been signing the number one class in the country without any NIL money this entire time. Sarcastically.
Right. Which we all know that Georgia is getting a ton of NIL money in its program because we've seen pictures of Carson Beck and other players with Lamborghinis. I don't think there's a significant difference, quite frankly, in the spending. We talked earlier about how Ohio State had spent $20 million. I think that number sounds about right. What do you think an elite player like Caleb got it? Caleb, what do you think an elite player like James Pierce would be worth?
Well, position matters too, but I'd throw seven figures at James Pierce. I'd throw a mill.
It's a very good number. You picked a very good number. So yes, I would too. And James Pierce, think about the leverage he has. Now, he can't go play football elsewhere in like the G League or something like that, but he could say, I've seen guys sit out time, and I would like to sit out a year, and I would like to just prepare myself for the NFL draft. Somebody is going to do that soon if the NIL money gets any restrictions put on it. But at this point, I don't think that can be the case. But James Pierce at $1 million? No, doesn't bother me at all. Now, I wonder if Kirby Smart is upset at all about the Roman Gabriel situation. Could that
you mean the Dylan Gabriel situation?
Dylan Gabriel situation. Because it's one thing to take away a team's Lance Hurd, who is going to be a backup for LSU. It's quite another thing to take away a Dylan Gabriel from an Oklahoma after the season he had. And that's an impactful player. We didn't talk about that in the offseason, but when that guy moved, can you imagine for a second Nico Iamaleava balls out and Lincoln Riley says, that's my guy. The only way to save my job is to give him $20 million. And hey, there's Will Ferrell. Let me ask him for the money. And can you imagine losing your quarterback in the middle of his career to another?
Kirby Smart didn't lose Dylan Gabriel, though. Remember, he left Oklahoma.
Right. So, but I wonder if that bothers Kirby Smart.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, now that Oklahoma's in the SEC, you defend your own guys. And we talked about Kirby Smart is not the dean, but he's going to be the leader of the coaches. I wonder if he's kind of calling out Oregon, saying, it might be legal, but it's not gentleman's rules. That makes sense.
I'm going to go a little deeper here. But first, Dave, I know who he is because I'm a football historian, but your age really showed when you said Roman Gabriel. So I'm going to let you explain who Roman Gabriel is.
He was a quarterback for the Rams back in the day. Dylan Gabriel, I'm sorry.
Yes. He won NFL MVP in 69. Mm-hmm. Now, Kirby Smart does have a problem in this regard. NIL's become the great equalizer for schools like Oregon and for schools even like Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And here's why. I've told you guys 1,000 times, there are 3 schools, just 3, and it's my Les Miles rule. There are 3 schools where someone with Les Miles' IQ could be their head coach and go win a national title. LSU is one, and he won a national title there. The other 2 are Georgia and Ohio State. Those are the only 3 schools. I don't even think Miami. You may disagree with me with Miami, Dave. I don't think, maybe Miami in the 80s. I don't think Miami now. I don't think you can do it at Miami now. So Georgia, LSU, Ohio State. Or you could literally, you don't even need to hire a coach at those schools. Just name a captain and you'll get the talent to win a national title. Kirby Smart's been enjoying that a lot over the past 7-8 years. And NIL has made it harder for him to have a lock on that state the way he needs to. And I think it's very frustrating for him. Oregon does probably have more NIL money because Georgia and LSU are reportedly behind the curve on NIL. I've heard that from a few sources, actually. Nick Saban, one of the reasons I think he retired. Now, we broke the story last week, by the way, about Jeremy Pruitt, and that trended a lot of people. That was revealing. Dave broke it at SEC Media Days. I think the other reason is he couldn't get Alabama boosters to cobble up the money he needed to recruit. And it was frustrating him that he was losing recruits to Texas A&M and Tennessee and people like that. Kirby Smart is very, very upset that he is losing the most built-in advantage that you have coaching at Georgia. Now, some of y'all are going to come and say, well, why did Mark Richt win a national title at Georgia? Georgia did have strict discipline standards under Mark Richt, and that held him back. So once they got rid of those discipline standards, it was over. They were just going to easily win national title after national title, as they've done. I think Kirby, there are some coaches you would ask them, do you like NIL? Josh Heupel would say yes. I think Heupel likes NIL. Don't you, Dave? I think Heupel actually likes the NIL in college football.
I think he loves it. Who wouldn't want $20 million to spend a year?
Dan Lanning loves it. Kirby Smart hates it. And so does Brian Kelly. Because they now have to compete for players that they used to have locks on that were the best in the country. And they didn't have to go anywhere to do it. They don't like having to compete. They had the inside track. I want to know your thoughts on this, Dave, because I think that's where it comes from. Georgia and LSU and Ohio State are no longer schools where you can just put a bland, team captain as a head coach and go win a national title the way you used to be able to.
I think that's true, but I think you're selling Josh Heupel short a little bit. I think his offensive approach, I think Josh Heupel would be successful. His offensive approach, the way he's able to build culture, we overuse that one too.
I haven't said anything negative about Josh Heupel.
Well, let me say this. I think he'd be fine without that. I don't know what's playing here on my computer. I think he would be perfectly fine without NIL. Sorry, my computer.
No, I think so too, to a certain degree, but that's because you just said it, because he has a creative offensive approach. Tennessee is not a school. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans, you may not like this. It's not a school where you could just put a blah, average, low IQ individual as your head coach and they just go stumble into winning a national title. It used to be that, but it's not that anymore. Is that fair to say, Dave? Tennessee has to have good coaching. They have to have a coach and a good staff that knows what they're doing. LSU and Georgia and Ohio State never needed that. And I think that is where Josh Heupel does have that. So what you're saying about Tennessee rings true. Now, with Josh Heupel's offensive creativity, if there was no NIL, Dave, he still wouldn't be beating it. He wouldn't be winning regularly battles with Kirby Smart, given what Kirby Smart's done at Georgia to this point. Kirby Smart would always be like getting number one classes at this point, and it'd be impossible. Nobody would, not just Josh Heupel.
Let me ask you this. If not for NIL, does Tennessee beat Alabama in 2022?
Yeah, yes, because the NIL really hadn't kicked off yet, and that talent was already in there.
Yeah, and I would argue too. Now, if I had it in there, I think I know where you'd go. If I said no transfer portal, no NIL, like old school football, they're not winning that game in 2022. They're getting pounded. They don't even have a quarterback.
No, exactly. I agree. You're right. That the transfer portal helped them win. Crystal asked, why wouldn't I add Texas to the list? I've always said this because Texas has, and Dave knows this with recruiting, Texas has a ton of competition for their recruits in the state of Texas, right? Texas A&M, Oklahoma, then all those smaller Big 12 schools pluck a few players out. So that's why Texas. And Derek says LSU and Georgia weren't good in the 90s and the late 80s. Different time. Georgia hired the worst head coaches in the history of the world. And so did LSU, actually, to be fair.
They have struggled at times with their coaches.
Who hired worse coaches, LSU or Georgia?
Okay. Would you rather be at Tennessee with $20 million in NIL or at Georgia with $10 million in NIL money?
Tennessee with 20. Tennessee with 20. And having more NIL money is an equalizer. That's why Josh.
I'd rather be. I only think that helps you with maybe 3 or 4 players. Like really significantly helps you. I think there's a number you can't be below if you're Kirby Smart and expect to have success. But I think with his discount, I'm going to say it's 25 to 50% that you would go there right now. And that may change with the more success that Josh Heupel has. But right now, you would take that discount, and it's a significant cut of about 25 to 50%, in my opinion. Now, that's not coming from anywhere else. But well, let me ask you. You got a little boy. He's got a while before he's going to be a superstar football player. If you looked at it with Kirby Smart, known commodity, Josh Heupel, almost a known commodity. Kirby Smart says, we're going to come give your son, who is a fantastic quarterback, we're going to give him $100,000 a year. And Josh Heupel says $150,000 a year.
And he's a quarterback. That's the position he plays?
Because I'm going to keep going.
Quarterback, I'd go Georgia because he'll be developed better at Georgia. Josh Heupel will make him a bigger star, but the talent is so loaded at Georgia, and he'll be developed better. He's not going to be developed for the NFL under Josh Heupel. Sorry.
Okay, well, I thought you would. That surprises me. I thought you would side with Heupel on that. So let me switch gears a little bit. What position would you take a discount if young Quincy comes to you and says, should I take less money to go play for Kirby Smart than Josh Heupel because of his history in the NFL?
I think that if Quincy was a wide receiver, I would actually have him take a discount to play for Josh Heupel instead of Kirby Smart.
I would agree with that.
If he was an edge rusher, I'd have him take a discount to play for Josh Heupel.
No, that's equal to me. Anyway, any other positions?
No, those are the two.
And Travis, we're not talking about crazy money. We're not talking about somebody handing Nico $20 million. I mean,
let's do it.
Well, I mean, but yes, anybody can be bought. So if somebody went to Carson Beck and said, hey, you have to sit out 3 years, but we're going to give you $1 billion. Well, he's going to do it. I mean, $1 billion. I mean, yes, anybody can be bought, but there's still a lot of other factors.
It's like
decision.
That's the thing. People always say that, like, oh, they would take this money. Well, yeah, but it depends on how much more you're offering them. Obviously, yeah. There's a difference between 150 and 100,000 and $1 billion and 100,000. Okay, yes, you're chasing the money I'm chasing the money with $1 billion. If a school says, hey, Quincy, we're going to give you $20 million, I'm like, I don't care if it's like Appalachian State A&M University that's in nowhere, Dakota, okay? Somehow Appalachia and Dakota. That's terrible geography.
But if it's $15 million, you're going to go to Georgia or Tennessee, right?
Yes. If Georgia's offering 15, then go to Georgia or Tennessee. Yes. But if they're offering 100,000 and the other school's offering 20 million, take the 20 million. You don't know if you're going to the NFL. You got generational wealth right there.
Let's talk a little bit of recruiting right after this. Hang tight with me for 2 minutes. David Sanders is taking trips. I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't be concerned about that. Also, we want to get into Mack Brown. As a matter of fact, let's do that right now, if you don't care. Mack Brown, can coaches be too old, Caleb?
Well, Mack Brown doesn't think so. Mack Brown said this week, quote, every coach recruiting against us says I'm going to quit. And 6 of them have been fired that said that already. That's what he said at ACC Media Days, I believe. This is obviously relevant. We know we don't get into it. We're not going to talk about it, but we know what happened politically this week where someone dropped out of a presidential race because their age was the obvious factor. The strongest defenders of Joe Paterno, you know what they say, Dave? They'll say, well, he was just too old at the time. He was too senile to know what was going on. If he was too senile, he shouldn't have been the head coach. Okay, period, end of story. I don't think coaches can be too old. Let me take that. I think coaches can be too old. But it's a case-by-case basis. Some coaches are 55 going on 90. Other coaches, quite honestly, are 75 going on 40. And Rick Barnes is 72 or is 70, and I think he's like a 50-year-old.
Like Tiger Woods, for instance, his body, he's 48, and his body's probably feels like a 60-year-old. I'm gonna say that it doesn't matter whatsoever, and I'll say this based off just an experience I had this morning. I was at the gym with a brand new sponsor who we get to introduce here in the next couple of weeks. And we certainly appreciate them. Thank you, National Fitness Center. But I was at the gym this morning, and I'm 50. I just turned 50. And I saw a guy that looked like, facial-wise, he was about your age, probably 30s or maybe even younger. And he was in absolutely horrible shape. And he also smelled a little bit like cigarettes. So, I mean, there's a reason that the life expectancy in the U.S. is 74. It's because we've made a lot of medical advances. So, it was 150 years ago, I think the average life expectancy, Caleb, was 45. So I think you can be sharper, but I think it depends on a case-by-case basis. And this kind of hit home in a different sort of way with Pat Summitt. I think it's incredibly difficult to expect the coach to make that call. Now, I know her lack of brain function accelerated because of the disease, but to ask her, hey, are you still good to coach? That's futile. Because as much as I hate to say it, and I love her to death, and I have as much respect for her as anybody I've ever met in the sports world. Anybody. She wasn't capable of making that call.
No. And I thought the university, this was part of what they did to Dave Hart, and they should be ashamed of themselves for it. Maybe not ashamed, but they made Dave Hart make that tough decision. And then they left him out to dry to act like, he forced, they made Dave Hart force her out, and then they let the Pat Summitt fan base get angry about it. And I'm like, somebody had to make that tough decision. You can't tell.
Help me with the timeline here. Dave Hart, I know, was hired to be a hatchet man and fire a bunch of people that were associate athletic directors.
Pat Summitt announced that she has dementia in April of 2011. In spring or summer, or middle of 2011. Dave Hart is hired in September of 2011. Pat Summitt steps down after the 2011-2012 season. Dave Hart was brought in to be the bad guy to force Pat Summitt out.
I'm not sure it was Pat Summitt, but I think he was there to clean house, and she, because of the disease, fell on the chopping block.
Yes. You couldn't let her.
There are a lot of associate ADs over there that are not over there anymore.
You couldn't let her coach when she had dementia that was going to spread rapidly. Now, on a let's get a little less morbid, because
advance rapidly. You can't catch
advance. It. Yes, advance rapidly. Let's get less morbid. I'll give you an example of where age showed, because Mack Brown is 72. His career, actually, from his Texas career, Dave, is very similar to me to Philip Fulmer's Tennessee career. They had kind of similar runs at Texas and Tennessee. Philip Fulmer was fired at 58. We all agree that at age 58, the game had already passed him by, right? To a certain degree.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree the game passed him by. I think he lost his intensity in the early 2000s. So no, I don't agree the game passed him by. I don't think his was an age issue at all.
I thought the game somewhat passed him by. I thought he had not. I put it this: I thought he did not keep up with the changing times of college football.
Okay. To your point, he was never going to do what Josh Heupel did offensively, because he wasn't willing to turn over the reins to someone to do something like that. But his foundation still works to this day, and it does at Georgia. Be a great recruiter, have the Jimmies and Joes, and the X's and O's will take care of itself. So
but
that
he
was
missed
the approach.
But to our actually previous talking point, funny enough, he lost sight of the fact that it wasn't going to be as easy to get the Jimmies and Joes as it was in the 90s. He lost sight of that fact.
Okay. So recruiting against Spurrier and Kirby Smart is more difficult than recruiting against Jim Donnan and Brad Scott. Yes. I'll give you that.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I remember I wrote an article one time where I said Tennessee fans, Ray Goff is not walking through that door. Okay, the whole Rick Peter Larry Bird thing. Sorry, Ray Goff's not walking through the door at Georgia. The minute Mark Richt went to Georgia, that changed the entire trajectory of Tennessee recruiting. And I think Fulmer had been developed in a certain way under Doug Dickey and as a coach under Johnny Majors, and thought this is the way things are done. And as he got older, he couldn't see the changing landscape of college football. You look at a Nick Saban. Nick Saban could have coached another 10 years, I feel like. And he was 74 or 73, something like that.
Not to get too sidetracked on you, but Timothy said Caleb Calhoun false. These players got him fired because they thought they knew more. You're both right, because he gave them too much freedom, especially the good players in the early 2000s when they got in trouble. So then they thought they knew more and had things figured out. Like, Eric, I mean, can you imagine any player under Nick Saban coming out and doing a public interview on a radio station in pterodactyl like Arian Foster did?
No.
That's embarrassing to the, I mean, let's be honest. Ha ha ha, it's funny, but it's embarrassing to the university. He's on live radio and these guys were trying to have him on. And I was standing off to the side and and I'm just like, I mean, that's embarrassing. Nick Saban would have called him in the office the next day and say, you need to call and apologize to them. He had lost total control of the program. And that's just one example. The fact that he would have James Banks supposedly run because he did something wrong at practice. Instead, James Banks did knee bends and just all out refused to run. Well, you kick him the hell out of your practice and maybe off your team if he just completely disregards what you tell him. That's your job as a coach and a boss.
Well, it's funny you say that. Exactly. And Fulmer had a thing because there were some academic issues for a minute for certain players. And Fulmer had a thing, and you probably were covering this, Dave. And now take it with a grain of salt. This was Kenny Smith. You know the Kenny Smith situation with Alabama and all of that. But according to him, if you skipped class and you weren't doing well in school, all Fulmer would do is go run a lap at practice. Okay. If I don't want to go to class and all I got to do is run a lap, well, then I'll run the lap. I'll call it a day. I mean, you should be go to class so you can play or you're off this team. I mean, and you're right. Things got totally out of control under Fulmer, and it all came to a head. Everybody talks about the Rick Clausen, Eric Ainge thing in 2005. That's not what derailed the team, actually. The arrest in the offseason are what derailed that team.
I think you're right. Big recruiting weekend for Tennessee. Want to talk about two prospects in particular. Give me 2 minutes and the latest on Tennessee recruiting. Brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks. All about trucks. Right place, right time. If you're a contractor, they'll save you time, make you money. You have to know them. If you're a contractor, just do me that favor. Go to worktruckswithanx.llc.com. worktruckswithanx.llc.com. Greatly appreciate that. All of our sponsors, if you see them on the website, all of our sponsors are what's called direct sponsors. In other words, we don't farm it out to somebody else. So we can vouch for them. So if you see a City Heating and Air Conditioning, a Medicare Misty, you know that they're the best in the biz. So hang tight. We're going to talk a little recruiting after this with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOK, that's hooked, when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, welcome. We certainly appreciate those that are a member of Hooker's Corner. You can join easily, and you can also win. Before we get to some great recruiting talks, some insight there, you can win for the month of July our John Henderson autographed mini helmet, which is just right behind me. So certainly check it out. All right, here we go. We're going to talk some visitors, but first, I want to talk about a quarterback. That's right. Tennessee is recruiting yet another quarterback, even though they have a 4-star on campus other than Nico, who was a 5-star. And then they've got a 5-star committed in George McIntyre. But here comes Brandon. Tennessee is recruiting Faison Brandon, a 5-star quarterback. He will pick, we'll pick the Vols when he announces his commitment on August the 3rd. He is the number 1 player in the 2026 class. A lot of people have him predicted to end up at Tennessee. Narrowed his schools to Alabama, LSU, NC State. What does this mean for Tennessee's quarterback room, Caleb?
It means a lot. It shows that Josh Heupel is going to always have options at quarterback. And this has always been the big deal for Tennessee, is always have 2 quarterbacks in the room so you have options. I think it's a lesson that Tennessee fans learned from 2008, but it wasn't necessarily Jonathan Crompton's fault. We know there was the whole situation with Dave Clawson, but the whole lesson that they took from that is you always need 2 options at quarterback. Now, you're probably never going to get 3 anymore, but you always need to guarantee yourself and set yourself up to have 2 quality quarterbacks on the roster no matter what. And Faison Brandon is another North Carolina kid. Tennessee's building that pipeline into North Carolina, man. I'm telling you guys, Tennessee is really getting it.
Pardon me. I think that say something insightful, Caleb.
I think that
something insightful is what you're supposed to say. That's all it takes me. All right, so I think that you're right. I think that Tennessee would love to get a quarterback out of Carolina because they typically come with more people in tow, right? They bring more prospects over. So I think he's a really, really significant pickup. What does that mean for Mr. Merklinger?
That he will have to compete for the starting job along with George McIntyre in 2026, or he won't be there. I'm pretty sure Merklinger's gone. Merklinger's transferring, and he was going to transfer anyway. Merklinger committed to see if he could beat out Nico or George McIntyre, and he can't. And that's perfectly fine. I don't think Merklinger commits to Tennessee, Dave, if the transfer portal era, and if the transfer portal era doesn't exist.
I think you're right. I think the transfer portal is the best thing for both teams and quarterbacks that has ever been created, because only one quarterback can play. And if you're able to move guys around without having to sit out a year, I think it makes things a lot more fair for the players. But I also think it makes things more malleable, manageable for coaches like Josh Heupel. In other words, let's say something crazy, like Nico transferred after this year. I think that there's a good chance Josh Heupel would go out and look at another quarterback, or look to Merklinger, or look to guys he has on his roster. But you have flexibility is the point that I was trying to make. I think Tennessee's in good shape at the quarterback position. Tennessee is in good shape in the offensive line position, except for depth. So David Sanders is one that I think that a lot of people thought would end up at Tennessee. He is scheduled to make his announcement on August the 17th. 6'6", 290 pounds, 5-star offensive tackle, has been predicted by some to Clemson, but Tennessee is thought to be in good shape. Now, he apparently is going to take two more visits to Nebraska and Tennessee. So what does that mean? Is he having second thoughts? And if he's having second thoughts, is that good or bad for Tennessee?
I don't think it's bad for Tennessee with Nebraska. I think the Ohio State one is a little bit worrisome because Ohio State came in late and started to make a play. I
think I misspoke. I said Tennessee, Ohio State. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you were all right with Nebraska. He's looking at Nebraska too. I can't see him. Nebraska is not there yet with Matt Rule. I can't see him going all the way to Nebraska to do where he could shine even more at Tennessee in a similar situation. The Ohio State thing is scary because we talked about Ohio State and NIL yesterday. They're opening their NIL checkbook. They have been opening it like no other team in college football this year. Now, they're doing it for this year in 2024. I don't necessarily know if they're doing it for recruiting classes in the future because they only have the number 5 ranked class. Tennessee's move is to literally insist to David Sanders Jr., hey, man, Ryan Day's probably not going to be there next year, right? Now, he may not care because what if Ohio State, Dave, that's why they got Chip Kelly. So they can tell recruits, yeah, he may not be here, but you'll have Chip Kelly if he's not here.
Yep. Hit that subscribe button and like. I think Sanders ends up a Vol or maybe a Tiger. I agree with you. I don't think he goes to Nebraska or Ohio State. So
wait, a Tiger?
Clemson Tiger.
You think Clemson's going to make a push? I'm telling you guys right now, Clemson's not going to get him.
I don't see him leaving the location. I think Tennessee's going to end up getting him, but if he didn't go to Tennessee, I would have Clemson in the mix. I don't really have Nebraska and Ohio State seriously in the mix. I may on Monday. He may prove me wrong.
The 20 teams are over. The days of Tennessee losing T. Higgins to Clemson is not happening anymore.
Okay.
That is a dark period of Tennessee history, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to the visitors that are on campus for the Vols. What have we got? And then another commitment watch that we want to get to. So what visitors are on campus is a significant visit weekend?
Yes, it's I guess there's a Big Orange Kickoff weekend is what they're calling it.
Yes.
Jamie French is visiting this weekend, and that's French with 2 Fs. He's a wide receiver.
Very French.
Very French. I can't do a French accent. Sorry. I'm terrible at it. So Jamie French is a 4-star, pushing 5-star receiver, 6'2", 175 out of Jacksonville. Right now, Texas and Alabama appear to be the leaders for him, but Tennessee should definitely make a push. The committer this weekend that I'm willing to bet Tennessee lands, this is one I'm almost surest about, is Lagonza Hayward coming out of Georgia, a 4-star safety across the board. He's visiting and he's committing on Saturday. If he commits, that would be 3 straight. If he commits to Tennessee, Dave, that would be 3 straight Saturdays that the Vols landed a 4-star out of the state of Georgia that Georgia wanted.
Yep. Pretty strong.
You're going to try to sell the Jamal Lewis, Kosi Coleman, Deion Grant thing to me. But
no, I mean, I just don't know. I don't know if these 3 guys, if there are any 3 guys that could be special. But I don't think that people knew that Deion Grant and Kosi Coleman and Jamal Lewis were going to be that special when they came out of Georgia. So I tell you what, I would certainly keep knocking on the door and getting those 4-star guys and 5-star guys and see which ones are special. I think there will be a group out of Georgia at some point, and this might be the year that will open up Tennessee to that state fully. I think they've been close to that, but you want to be in an Atlanta kid's mind. You want it to be even going into your recruitment, that they like Tennessee as much as they like Georgia. Because remember, Georgia's in Athens, which it's not in Atlanta. That's a cosmopolitan city. So I think the goal is to get some high-level guys like Coleman, Lewis, and Grant, and make it even going into recruiting. That's all I meant, is that they could have that kind of impact in which you go in and it's even up from the get.
All right, I can see that. And lastly, Onis Kananbani. A
Great name with his name, I guess. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave